In the year 180 AD, a man lay dying in a cold military tent near the Danube River. Outside, a brutal war raged. Inside, a plague consumed his body. He had lost 8 of his 13 children, his wife, his brother, millions of his people. And yet, in his final moments, he didn't cry. He didn't curse the gods, he simply said, "Go to the rising sun, for I am already setting." This man was the most powerful human being on earth. He ruled over 70 million people. He commanded the greatest military force in history. But he never wanted any of it. His name was Marcus Aurelius, and his private journal, never meant to be read by anyone, became one of the most influential books ever written. This is his story. Marcus Aurelius was born in Rome on April 26th, 121 AD, into one of the city's most prestigious families. But his privilege came with a price. His father died when Marcus was just 3 years old. From that moment, death would become his constant companion. The boy was raised by his grandfather, and something about young Marcus caught the attention of Emperor Hadrian himself. The emperor saw in this quiet, serious child something rare. A mind drawn not to power or pleasure, but to wisdom. At the age of 12, while other Roman boys dreamed of military glory and political power, Marcus fell in love with philosophy. He began wearing rough Greek cloaks instead of fine Roman robes. He slept on hard wooden boards instead of soft beds. His mother worried he was ruining his health, but Marcus had discovered something that would define his entire life: stoicism. This ancient philosophy taught that we cannot control what happens to us, only how we respond. That virtue is the only true good, that death is natural, not something to fear. And Marcus didn't just study these ideas, he lived them. Emperor Hadrian, impressed by the young man's character, arranged for Marcus to be adopted into the imperial family. Not because of his bloodline or his ambition, but because of his mind. At age 17, Marcus was told he would one day rule the world. He did not celebrate, he did not rejoice, he was terrified. In 161 AD, Marcus Aurelius became emperor of Rome at the age of 40, and almost immediately everything went wrong. Within months of taking power, the Parthian Empire invaded from the east. This was Rome's greatest rival, and they smelled weakness in a new emperor who preferred books to battles. Marcus had never wanted to be a warrior, but he had no choice. He sent his armies east, and after 5 years of brutal fighting, Rome emerged victorious. But the soldiers brought something back with them, something far worse than any enemy army: the Antonine Plague. We believe today it was likely smallpox. It spread through the empire like wildfire, fever, skin eruptions, agonizing death. At its peak, 2,000 people died every single day in Rome alone. The total death toll reached somewhere between 5 and 10 million people, nearly 10% of the entire Roman population. The empire's economy collapsed. Villages were abandoned, fields went unplanted. The Roman army, the greatest fighting force on earth, was decimated. And in the midst of this catastrophe, the Germanic tribes to the north saw their opportunity. The Marcomanni, the Quadi, the Sarmatians. Hundreds of thousands of warriors poured across the Danube, burning Roman cities, slaughtering Roman citizens. For the first time in centuries, Rome itself faced the threat of invasion. Marcus had no choice. The philosopher emperor had to become a soldier. For nearly 12 years, he lived not in the marble palaces of Rome, but in military camps along frozen rivers, directing campaigns, negotiating with tribal chiefs, watching young men die. And through it all, his personal life was a catalogue of tragedy. Marcus had 13 children with his wife Faustina. 8 of them died before reaching adulthood. His son Verus, a sweet boy he hoped would rule, alongside his surviving son, died during what should have been routine surgery. His brother Lucius died of the plague, his mother died. His wife of 35 years died while traveling with him on campaign. By the end, only 2 of his children remained alive. Imagine carrying this weight, the death of nations, the death of family, the burden of being responsible for 70 million people while plague and war consumed everything around you. Most men would have broken, most men would have turned bitter or cruel or simply given up. But Marcus had his philosophy. Every night, after the battles and the politics and the endless responsibilities, Marcus Aurelius would retreat to his tent. And he would write. Not proclamations, not imperial decrees. He wrote to himself, private notes, reminders, arguments with his own weaknesses, a conversation between Marcus and his own soul. He never intended anyone to read these words. He called them simply, "To myself." Today we call them meditations. And in these pages we find something extraordinary. The most powerful man in the world wrestling with the same struggles that every human being faces. "You have power over your mind," he wrote, "not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." When he felt overwhelmed by his duties, he reminded himself. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, "I have to go to work as a human being." When he dealt with difficult, ungrateful people, he wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. But I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil. And so none of them can hurt me." When he felt the weight of mortality, he found comfort in perspective. Dwell on the beauty of life. Watch the stars and see yourself running with them. This was the secret of Marcus Aurelius. Not that he didn't feel pain or grief or fear. He felt all of these things deeply, but he understood something crucial. Suffering is inevitable. Our response to it is not. We cannot control whether plague strikes. We cannot control whether our children die. We cannot control whether enemies attack, but we can control how we think, how we act, who we become in the face of hardship. The happiness of your life, Marcus wrote, depends upon the quality of your thoughts. This wasn't just philosophy for Marcus. It was survival. Night after night, alone in his tent, he was essentially practicing therapy on himself, using reason and perspective to keep his mind from being overwhelmed by the chaos of his life. And it worked. Despite everything, Marcus Aurelius is remembered not as a tyrant who cracked under pressure, but as the last of the 5 good emperors. A man who fought for his people, cared for the poor and weak, and tried every day to live according to virtue. Even his enemies respected him. On March 17, 180 AD, after fighting for 19 years, Marcus Aurelius finally contracted the plague he had spent so long battling. His doctors told him he had days to live. He called his closest advisors not to mourn, but to plan for the succession. When they wept at his bedside, he reportedly scolded them. "Why do you weep for me?" he asked. "Think rather about the plague and the death that awaits us all." He faced his end the same way he had faced his life, with acceptance, with duty, with reason. He was 58 years old. Nearly 2,000 years later, his private journal has been read by millions. Presidents, generals, athletes, entrepreneurs. Bill Clinton reportedly reads it once a year. Former Secretary of Defense James Mattis carried it with him on deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan. The philosophy Marcus practiced, stoicism, has experienced an extraordinary revival in the modern world. Its ideas about focusing on what you can control, about finding perspective in difficult times, about building mental resilience, feel more relevant now than ever. But perhaps the most remarkable thing about Marcus Aurelius is simply this. He was given absolute power. He could have had anything, done anything. No one could have stopped him. And he chose to spend his nights writing reminders to be humble, to be patient, to be good. Nearly 2 millennia after his death, the words of a Roman emperor still speak to us. Not because he was powerful, but because he was human. He struggled with anger, with grief, with the fear of death, with the exhaustion of responsibility. And every night he picked up his pen and reminded himself how to face another day. "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be," he wrote. "Be one." The question is, will you? If Marcus Aurelius's story resonated with you, subscribe for more. Next week, we explore another Stoic who went from slave to one of history's greatest philosophers, Epictetus.